Join Town Pump's Pump It Up Rewards Plus program and never pay full price for fuel again.
Save 5 cents on every gallon every day at any Town Pump across Montana.
Plus, earn and redeem points on your favorite in-store items to get free stuff with our clubs.
Stop in and pick up a rewards card. Download the Pump It Up Rewards Plus app today.
Or visit townpump.com/rewards to register and start saving.
Town Pump. Right down the road. Pump it up. Oh, yeah.
Right. Excited about the victory from this past weekend. I know we had a chance to talk about it after the game, but really felt like it was a team win. Obviously starts with getting a shutout on defense. Thought a lot of guys played well. I thought we tackled real well. And then ultimately, played a lot of guys to contribute to the end result of, shutting out a really good football program. Offensively, while it did take us a little while to put points on the board, we were pretty consistent throughout, with our guys up front and their play. We were able to hit some play action passes in the passing game. And ultimately just really got them off balance. I think both with our ability to run it and then get Sean, out of pocket at times. It was a really good blend of the outside zone in particular, and then the play action off it. So really pleased with how our offensive line, I guess, when you cut through it, how they played. They're playing at a high rate right now, playing with really good pad level, and we have an athletic group that now I think has added a little bit more physical nature to the way they go about things. So, special teams wise, we limited, the most prolific return man in the country, gave him the one opportunity. And when we did have to cover, we covered real well. And, on the flip side, the biggest play for us, was tackling them on the fake punt, as far as just the return game goes. But that was a big play at that point in time. That was kind of the last ditch for them, and then we were able to score the next play offensively. Concerning with the missed kicks, for sure, and that did pile up on Brendan a little bit. But what I did appreciate, on 3 of those missed kicks, he had to go back out and kick off right after and knocked it out of the end zone on each one of those. So we'll work through that. Still got tons of faith in his ability to do what he's been doing to this point, and we'll move forward in that regard. So in front of us now, homecoming, an opportunity to play a team that's scored 150 points the last 2 weeks. And really has got a lot of good players, has an explosive, way about him on offense. Hit a return in their own right last week. And I think they're continuing to find themselves as these weeks have gone along defensively. I know if you just purely look at their scores, that's all over the map, starting with the game with Oregon. I think they did play Wyoming, who's 3-1, to a closer game certainly than the previous one with Oregon. But, as they've worked through these last 2 weeks, in particular, conference foe, to be up like they were at halftime against Cal Poly, that was very impressive. So we got our work cut out just to go back to reset again, not get too high after a victory like that. Come back, go to work, and that's where we're at right now. As far as anything on the injury front, leave Tommy off for now. I think he's continuing to progress, but that's probably how we see it for this week. I think Scott Humphrey was one that went out of the game. He's continuing to be evaluated as we work through the week. I know things changed with Simeon Woodard through the week last week. He did practice. So we'll find out more about his availability as this week goes along. But ultimately got out of that game pretty healthy, all things considered. So that's where we're at. Excited about the opportunity to be back home. We have a home now, so we'll go on the road for a while. I'm really looking forward to getting in front of our fans again come this Saturday. So with that, I'll open it up for questions.
I guess just one more on the injury front. Is Ty still a week or two away, probably?
Well, he's practicing this week, and what does that yield for Saturday? I didn't put him on the depth chart because I think we don't know yet. But he is practicing this week, and we'll just have to see how that goes.
Sure. And then I know you mentioned some of the just looking at the tape from Weaver. Is there anything else that kind of stuck out after looking at the tape?
Well, I thought we we withstood some things on defense. They made a few plays here and there, got themselves in some second and shorts. And I just appreciate how we battled. I think ultimately they were 3 of 17 on third down. And that wasn't all because they were in second and long. We did some really good things on second down to push them back in a couple of occasions to, then on third and short, we made it complicated. I know they converted a couple fourth and shorts, but ultimately I think they were 2 of 6 on fourth down too. So, our guys just playing in the moment, I guess, was the big thing. A lot of times you can let that big gain maybe on first down, if even it's 8-9 yards in your second one, kind of let that affect you on the next play. We didn't do that. They made a couple plays in that third quarter that, pushed them into our territory. The game's still just 20-0. I thought we really excelled in that sequence. So yeah, I think situations before where we maybe let one thing lead to the other, I don't think that happened to us on Saturday, and that's something we can really build upon. But I know we're playing physical on defense. We're playing really fast, and that's where we want to be. And then that whole mindset of playing together and trusting one another. I don't have to make the play if someone else can. If I do my job, I think that's shining through to this point in the season.
And I don't know if you saw, Sean being named Offensive Player of the Week this week. Just I guess thought his performance.
It was. I think it was very impactful. You throw for 2, you run for 2, and you make a lot of plays. And there was a lot of unscripted plays, I think, within that as well. I thought there was really some good. I think he can continue to, keep coming in the overall game. I think passing wise, there were some good things, but there were some things where I think better suited to throw the ball than to maybe pull it down and run on a couple plays. We drove in a position to get points on the board before halftime. And even within that sequence, there was some good and some not so good. I think, he can be physical. We don't need our quarterbacks to be physical. And that's there's a real balance there. He doesn't need to make all the plays when he's out there. And he didn't. I mean, he made some. So I think continuing to hone him in is what we'll try to keep, attempting to do, understanding that he's going to go out there and be able to make plays that a lot of people can at the same time.
Can you talk about his leadership role, I guess, being at the helm for 2 straight games. So just his leadership role on the field.
Yeah, I think he's got tremendous leadership qualities. I think he's a guy that, in year 2 now that our guys have been around more and more, they look up to him. Being elected captain was representative of that. And, I think they see more than anything, he's a guy that's going to compete like crazy. So, I think that's a unique thing. We have 2 quarterbacks and we have 2 captains that are quarterbacks. So you don't have this dip like, some teams would if they go from this captain quarterback to then they go to a young guy. That's pretty dramatic as far as the leadership goes, or the void as far as leadership goes. But in fact, we probably stay very similar. Two different leaders in their own right, 2 different players, but both guys that have garnered a lot of respect from their teammates, and I think that really helps beyond just the playmaking.
He mentioned kind of 49ers influence on the offense Saturday. I guess can you speak at all to?
He's a 49ers fan. I know that. Coach Husher is not a 49ers fan. I think he's a fan of what they do. But yeah, I mean, I think you look at teams like the 49ers and obviously the Dolphins now, which is all one and the same. The Rams going back. I think they have that blend of the under center zone running game with the play action that it can be very prolific if you have the right pieces to put in place. And so I mean, just how we looked with being under center, with the tighter split receivers, with the motion, I think it probably blended that. And if there was a little influence, there probably was to encourage Sean to say, this is your team here. We're emulating your team. But a good couple teams, if it's the 49ers, the Dolphins, to try to pick some things from.
Yeah, has Tommy worked at all under center, or is he just kind of specific?
No, he has. We have. I mean, it's and you gotta be a little bit more deliberate within the week, but whether it's spring ball or fall camp, we work under center enough where we should be able to do it. But Sean would have a lot more experience. a lot of guys come out of high school and they maybe haven't ever been under center, and that was the case primarily for Tommy. But that's more and more the case these days. So it's a little bit of a lost art to be able to take a snap and get away from center, because that sounds really simple, but that's not second nature to these guys. So that being said, I think Sean's experience and comfortability with it does make a difference when you can implement it as much as we did in the game plan.
You mentioned the explosive nature of that Portland State offense. I guess anything specific that stands out from him, that stands out from him.
Well, I think right now, these last couple games, you start with our quarterback. He's doing a really good job of making plays both with his arm and his feet. Very capable as a passer, and he's got some big targets to throw to. They have guys that have all kinds of receptions. I think their leading receivers are 11 and 8 as far as that goes, and we're 4 games in, but big targets and guys that can get open, and a good blend of the RPO game, similar to a lot of things that we have within our offense. So they can be right by the decision if he's making good decisions as far as whether he should pull it or whether he should throw it or whether he should get on the perimeter. So, there's definitely some elements that will be very challenging. And then they're running a bunch of running backs, guys with really high yards per carry right now. I think they have 3 that are running over 6 per carry. And then the quarterback's in the same mix. So, they got the capability to do quite a bit. I think that's what you see, in the 4 games. They can pose a lot of problems for you, and they have athletes that can execute.
And similar question, what do you see from their defense?
We didn't play them last year, so thinking back to playing them in 21, a complete overhaul as far as what they're doing. They were Desert Swarm flex defense back that year. Now they're more traditional 4-down play coverage. Big up front, big enough up front, active up front, linebackers that can run, make plays there. They haven't necessarily taken and been nearly as aggressive, say, as a Weber in their coverage game. Doesn't mean they wouldn't against us. More zone, but I'm sure the thought process is to keep the ball in front of them, and that's kind of how they play. Make it hard for the offense, make the offense ultimately, shoot itself in its foot. So, can appreciate where they're at. I think they not having played them last year, and you just purely look at their schedule. I think it was up and down. But when the up's there, they were good enough last year. We saw them on film a bunch, and then now this year it feels like, okay, you start out with Oregon. That's a tough task for anybody. Going the road to Wyoming, and that game didn't get away from them by any means. And then, they have the 91-0 game. I don't care who you play. That was that. I think at the end of 3 quarters, and then they go in a conference play and do what they did. It's impressive.
How have you felt about John Johnson's performance so far in 3-4 weeks?
Yeah, I really like what John's brought. I've said it. I think we had the ability to play more man coverage, and a lot of that is because of the addition of John. I think the improvement of the guys that have been around, the addition of Andrew Pauldrell, but John's, I think continuing to be a guy that we can lean on. I know from the corner position, he had the most snaps the other night, and I think came up with a really strong effort. So, that whole group, the corners. Let's just start with that group. Has played improved football, and it's personnel, it's experience of some of the guys that have been around, but it was something we definitely needed.
The depth you mentioned throughout fall camp, that you were pleased with that, and then I think other than the first game, you haven't been fully healthy at that position. But just how pleased have you been with the?
And we've went at it and played now 5 guys through the course of these games. I haven't had Simeon in the last couple of weeks. Didn't have Miles at South Dakota State, but yeah, I think and didn't have Andrew at South Dakota State either. So. John's been consistent, and I think we've played at a rate different than we did last year. And part of it is we're able to play more man coverage, and that's when you can do that, you're gonna highlight a corner more than you are playing zone coverage, and you're gonna put them in tougher situations at the same time. So I think they've stepped up so far.
Trayton was a guy that a lot of people, including yourself, said had a big fall camp. He had a couple touchdowns this last week. What do you kind of see him in this early stretch?
Well, we found him a couple more times, but he has been really consistent, and the nature of our first 3 games, he wasn't targeted but a couple times. And we'll have to keep finding ways, within the game plan to highlight him and Derek. I think they're both obviously, I think, capable beyond that, more than capable receivers. And they run really good routes. And that was really, both his touchdowns were on his ability to lose his defender. And he did a great job of that. And then Derek at the same time, we need to find ways to get him the ball. And that's, we had how many times we threw the ball, we scrambled on another probably 8 plays. So you end up, in 60 some plays, you're upper 20s as far as pass calls, but you throw it in the high teens. It's misleading sometimes, but those 2 guys, however many times or whatever they end up with receptions, I guess they need to be, a conscious thought in our mind as we prepare each week, because they're both guys that can separate and make big plays.
Yeah, I know Derek has been such a force in run blocking or just blocking in general. Is Trayton kind of in that similar boat, I imagine? Yeah,
he's playing more in line, and he's done a really good job so far this year. And that's, I probably spoke more to the pass side of things in fall camp, but it was really how he was doing, against guys like Brody and Ben, and and that's such a good advantage we have, is when you're a good player, but you can go against a good player every day in practice in spring and fall, it makes you that much better. And, without spring, I think Trayton really, I think that's where you felt like, boy, he's really continued to come along. And that's why I think I spoke like I did through the course of fall camp, is because it wasn't just on the pass side, it was on the blocking side as well.
Both of his touchdowns took a while to develop. So I guess can you also just talk about the dominance of the O-line, with those 2 plays, with the run game, and Coach Al Johnson, what they're doing there?
Yeah, I think it all works together. When you got a defensive line in run mode, as versus pass rush mode, it does make it a lot easier to pass block, because that becomes this transition as that play is going on. So you really don't even get a pass rush. And I think our guys are making those run plays in those either out of pocket play action or in pocket play actions look very similar. And when you can get a defense guessing on its heels, you can get linebackers running like crazy. It's going to allow you to pop some runs like we did, and it's going to allow for some big plays in the passing game. And those big plays in the passing game, the couple to Trayton, I know there's one to Aiden Garrigan, a couple misses that still have to make them wonder. We got behind the defense a couple times and we didn't complete it. And then Sean's, I think he probably had 3-4 runs off of those out of pockets as well, including one of his touchdowns. So, it starts with the O-line being able to block the run, but then make everything else look, very similar.
And Julius Davis dominated, the run game as well. So I guess just talking about him, the role he's kind of come into, a new guy.
Yeah, I think we brought Julius in with high hopes, high expectations, and I think some things flash through fall camp, but we don't tackle a lot, so it's hard to really get a gauge. But as we've gotten into the season now, on each one of the Saturdays, he's proven to be a guy that's tough to tackle, and he's got I think really good instincts as far as his tempo goes and how he sees things. You don't look back and at the end of the game saying that Julius missed this one, he's missed a few maybe, but he's been pretty spot on as far as how he sees it. And then his ability to get into the secondary consistently has been, as much as anything, his ability to make the first guy miss either at the first level or the second level. So, we need to keep giving him opportunities. I think he's proven very worthy of that. And, I think that whole group, just looks a lot different than, what we had for the bulk of last season.
A couple of plays that Nolan made a tackle in the first play from scrimmage that seemed like it stopped a pretty big gain, and then Ben was just kind of put on the edge on the reverse. It seemed like just the discipline and the being in the right place was kind of constant throughout.
Yeah, I think doing your job and then being able to do it really effectively, being able to play fast. Even the fake punt, they had some blockers, but Makeda Riley and Zach Cruz came out of nowhere to snuff that out, I guess. So yeah, I think it's our guys being very disciplined, trusting one another, and then being able to, when given the opportunity to make a play, because Nolan's was not an easy play, and that beginning of the game can look a lot different if that's all of a sudden a 40-yard run as opposed to, I think it was an 8-yard run. It had the makings of a bigger run, and Nolan made a really good play. So we made more plays in space, I think, in this game than we had in even the previous couple, and that's a good sign because I think Weber State's skill is really good. Bankston had proved that in particular in the games preceding. So we need to keep doing that. I think your confidence grows in what you're doing, how you're able to do it as you put performances like that together. So we should be able to build off of that, but not lose sight of what kind of got us there. It's, to your point, it's being disciplined and then just trusting what you see and doing it 100 miles an hour.
I guess with Danny having to miss a half because of the target call, McCade probably at least starting. Yeah, McCade will step in like he did in the game. I think we even that backup role beyond McCade, so that fourth guy in the mix was Neil Daly. Now Neil's been out and it will continue to be out. I don't know if we've talked about that, but some of those things go unnoticed. But Cole Bullock stepped in, and I think both of the last 2 games has done some good things. He's still a guy that is learning our defense kind of on the fly, but he can tackle the football when he's in the right place. And so we'll see how that goes through the course of the week, whether that gets Cole in any kind of rotation in that first half. But I think he's made some real strides the last couple of weeks. And I guess just looking at that targeting call, is there anything else? Is there anything that kind of stood out to you? Watching it?
Well, I it's something that though that rule it's obviously well intentioned, and the execution of that rule, where it doesn't have to be called on the field, it can be called up in the booth, is well intentioned. I don't think all targetings are necessarily egregious as far as the intent, and I think that would be one of them. But the elements of targeting were there, and it was called, and we'll deal with the consequences.
Anything else in the room?
At Blackfoot Communications, our mission is to connect people, businesses, and communities, bringing a world-class fiber network to homes, communities, and businesses of all sizes. Ensures Montanans have access to fast, reliable, and secure internet and phone services. Are you ready for fiber internet? To find out if fiber is coming to your area, visit goblackfoot.com/readyforfiber. Connect to more with Blackfoot Communications.
Coulter, do you have anything?
Yeah. Hey, Coach, can you hear me okay?
Yep, gotcha.
A couple things for you. I know I asked you about the communication of the defensive line, but I wanted to follow up on that a little bit. It seems like that's such a key element to what they do, especially just kind of the back and forth and working as a unit together. So what are sort of the factors that have helped them have that great communication, and how important is that to your guys' defensive scheme?
Well, it's funny that they don't necessarily communicate a lot, but they have to be on the same page, which is a form of communication, I suppose. So it's our coaches, putting them in position to run games, where 2 guys are working in tandem and maybe exchanging responsibility. And we're doing that, I think, really well, both on when it's relative to the run game, and then on passing situations as well. I think we're not a team that's just going to take our 4 guys and just run them forward a whole lot. But when we do that, we have to have gap integrity, and our guys behind them have to be well positioned to play the right gaps. And then when we're moving, it's all tied together at the same time. So I think that's the one thing we're doing up front is understanding that group does not have to light up the stat sheet to be effective. The D line, obviously you want to get tackles for loss and sacks and those things, but if you're doing your job consistently, someone else is getting the glory a lot of times, and that's okay. When a D lineman tries to do too much, it might play out of his gap, then we have real problems. So those type of situations, and that's maybe how I took your question the most the other night, is we are playing really disciplined and really hard in that regard of just doing our job and doing it in a real physical way, really trying to affect the line of scrimmage. And a lot of times that means someone else is maybe getting credit for the tackle, but I think collectively that group is pretty dialed in on being where they're supposed to be and doing it in a pretty effective manner.
Yeah, I guess that's what I was asking is how do you play so many line games and still stay fundamentally sound and gap sound? Because it seems like you guys are doing both those things pretty dang well.
Yeah, it's experience, it's trust in the call. I think and trusting and seeing it play out, I guess, at the same time. So I think everybody's nature is the see ball, find ball, no matter what position you're playing. But in the grand scheme of things, that's not how we play defense. It's I got a job to do. I need to do it as well as I can. If that provides me an opportunity to make a play on the ball, great. If it provides someone else the opportunity to make a play on the ball, just as well. And I think we're really dialed in on that right now. And those guys work really hard to let's say to perfect those movements. And we're certainly not perfect, but trying to do those things as best they can. And then I think our coaches are doing a really good job of putting them in the best scenarios to be disruptive relative to what the other team's scheme is. And there's a real art to that. So Coach Howe and Coach Jean-Baptiste, along with Coach Daly and Coach Garza, they all get credit for, let's see, how does this all fit together? Those D-line coaches, their job is to really fit those movements to the calls on the back end. And I think we're doing a really good job of that right now. We have guys that are capable at the same time. You have to have good players to do the things we're doing. So it's twofold, but then those guys have to really be bought into just doing their job and not worrying about what that stat sheet looks like at the end of the day.
I've been impressed with your whole team's sort of perspective on being part of something bigger than themselves, but those defensive linemen, they talk a lot about upholding that sort of legacy of Montana State's defensive line. So, how impressed are you by that element? How important is that for them as a group?
Yeah, I'm real impressed because I think they understand that our success begins and ends with our group. And that's an every down deal. And, it's not just 4 guys. It's ideally 8 to 10 guys contributing to that. And, they've had some really good influences, I think, going back in their time. They talk about that. I think there's definitely a standard that they feel that they need to uphold, and maybe haven't always, I suppose. That's hard. It's hard to always uphold that high standard, but they're doing a really good job of prioritizing. Hey, if we're going to play great defense, and that's our intent, that group needs to play great. And that's not always, like I've said a couple of times, reflected in any kind of personal stats, but ultimately, when you can hold a team down, near 100 yards rushing, near 100 yards passing, that's a pretty good day at the job for that group in particular.
And you mentioned how sometimes when Portland State can get going, they have some really electric players, especially offensively. The quarterback is really, really athletic, and they have some receivers too. So how important is it to not let them find rhythm on Saturday?
Oh, it's critical. I think the mode of what they want to do is stay ahead of the chains. They're right now, I think they passed us as far as third down production right now in the league, 4 games in. And that's, I'm sure, a product of just the down and distances more than it is anything. They're run oriented. Doesn't mean they can't pass, doesn't mean they don't have capable, but they want to be in that mode. They want to keep you guessing. So it's, discipline, tackling. Those 2 things are going to be critical. It's one thing to have the discipline and be in the right spot, but if you can't get them down, then what good is it? I thought on Saturday, watching the film, they broke a number of tackles, a number of those big plays. It wasn't because Cal Poly didn't have someone there. And then you talk about the quarterback, his ability to go the distance is there. So a little bit different animal as far as the quarterback run game goes and the quarterback's ability to run the football than we faced this past week. And we're going to have to be ready for that. Really the past couple weeks, going back to South Dakota State, we haven't faced a quarterback that was really a run threat, but he absolutely is.
Just sort of the arc of a season, turning the page no matter what happened the previous week. How have you thought your team has done so far with that, and how important is that now coming back home going into this week?
Well, it's a constant reminder. I know that, you finish up, you play on the evening on Saturday, you get home late. I believe in what we do. We give our guys off Sunday, and you hope that allows for some decompression, some reality checks, those type of things. We watch the film on Monday morning and, really want to be able to put that previous game behind us, the good and the bad, and we go right back on the field. We correct some things. So, but yeah, you constantly reminding guys that game we just had really has nothing to do with this next game. You can build off it for sure. But you have to go back to work, and regardless of who you play, you got to get ready to go. And that doesn't happen just by showing up on Saturday. It's by turning the page, I guess, on Monday. And we preach to that every week. And I think we got a group of, older guys, 5th and 6th year guys that have heard that, that same message through the last couple of years. And, if, I task them, I guess as much as anything, if you feel like someone's, not preparing the way they need to prepare, full right to get on them for that. But more so, let's encourage those younger guys of what each week needs to look like, what the process needs to look like each week, what the preparations, so that you don't just plan on showing up on Saturday and just relying on talent alone.
Thanks, Coach. Appreciate it.
Yep.
A DUI is a serious charge, and the process can be overwhelming, but it doesn't have to be. I'm attorney Dave Maldonado, and I have the experience and knowledge necessary to effectively represent you and make the situation manageable. Visit BigSkyDefender.com.